Hey everyone. So I want to do an important update here. We are headed into this faux inauguration, and I want to talk about what's going to happen in the next few weeks and in the next month. A few things before we get started. If YouTube does go down, I'm trying to set up a site on Bitchute, so I will either put that up on my website, the Uranianastrologer.com, and I'll put it in the description section as well and on my Facebook page. Another thing I want to mention is that I will be speaking somewhat in code, so I don't get taken down here. That's just the reality right now. So I'll try to make the words fairly easy to decipher, like talking about Mr. T and Mr. B. And I think you know what I mean when I talk about that. Another few things to mention before we get started. We're working here with the Uranian system of astrology, which is a system of harmonics and frequency and resonance. So we are looking at all patterns of consciousness, and I work a lot with the Aries and world axis right now, which is this axis. This main axis. So that represents and tells us of the inner workings of the whole damn hive, the whole living planet, and what we are all experiencing and manifesting as a collective consciousness. Now, if you remembered from the last few updates, I spoke about the trans-Neptunian planets Zeus and Poseidon simultaneously making contact with the world axis from mid-January to mid-February, and actually Poseidon stays there through March before pulling away. And that this configuration, the Zeus-Poseidon configuration, we receive truth, clarity, insight. We receive proof and evidence of what has really been going on. This configuration also tells us about a projection of ideologies, ideological wars, if you will, and it does tell us something about the mental leadership guiding us through this time. Now, Poseidon stands for enlightenment, wisdom, illumination, and on the world axis, it is bringing in divine guidance. The sign itself is represented by two crescent moons, one facing upward and the other down and bound by a bar. The bar holds the receptivity of the two moons, which then radiate out in the form of wisdom. And combined with Zeus, the planet of creative directed energy, it pushes this truth and enlightenment out into the world, providing proof, evidence, as well as mental leadership. And this is not just of our world leaders, but anyone who is out there right now bringing clarity and insight to the people. So that means everyone who's speaking truth, light warriors, and the like, who are out there being informants, seers, truthers. And it can also tell us about this Zeus-Poseidon ideological wars. And I'm sure that every one of you is experiencing this right now, this separation of worlds from your friends, families, groups, communities, where there are two very distinct realities and perceptions of what is actually going on. In addition, it's important to note that we are now at this nation's Pluto return. That is, Pluto is returning to the natal place when this country was born in 1776. So what does that mean? It means that we are at the beginning of and headed over the next 3 years of a complete transformation of the nation's identity. With Pluto in Capricorn, we are watching and part of one of the biggest power transfers in the history of mankind. And the power and the destiny of man are being given back to we the people. And this is the kind of return that we collectively question. What are we doing here? What is this all for? Pluto represents change. And so these are major turning points. And what we're about to see and be a part of is a cataclysmic evolution of the world and worldview. It's cataclysmic because you have oppositional forces, one that resists change and one that represents the future. And when the evolutionary force becomes stronger than the resisting force, the result is cataclysmic change. It's a cataclysmic event. I mean, this is the big show that is upon us with the Zeus-Poseidon. This is an event where what is happening in reality is irrefutable, and the universe and the divine guidance of Poseidon is setting the stage for an event that will catalyze people's attention and their souls. People need to see. And for those who are still asleep, they need to be shown the truth so they can decide for themselves in their souls the nature of reality. And the universe conspires to make this happen. So Pluto, which is in orb now, making its first close contact to its natal place in April, where it'll be less than a degree away. And it'll be back and forth over this point over the next 3 years. So Pluto in Capricorn stirs up issues of power, government, authority, autonomy, the use and abuse of powers, and it is an exhumation of all of this negative use of powers, all that no longer serves. And that's what we'll be seeing. And in turn, that will be a catalyst for complete changes of economic and financial systems, of political parties, of government, of social and moral values. It's a complete transformation of the laws and legislations that lack integrity. So keep in mind that over the next 3 years, that our nation's Pluto return and this incredible metamorphosis of this nation is running in the background and is always in play. So you've got the Pluto return, the evolution of this nation's soul, running alongside the Zeus-Poseidon on the world axis, which simultaneously makes several contacts over the next few years as well. So the question remains, what truth insight are we bringing forward at any given moment with that Zeus-Poseidon on the world axis? And in order to know that, we have to explore the planetary pictures around it. Okay, so what is around this Zeus-Poseidon? What is the truth that we are learning about? Is this major structure, Hades, Kronos, Node, Neptune, with the Saturn in this three-point picture? We are learning the truth of the nefarious and fraudulent and corruption in our government and in our world. The old matrix is dissolving, and so are obsolete government ideals and structures. We're learning about government deception, and it's also why you're seeing right now in the governments around the world a lot of collapse. Merkel stepping down, the Italian Fenzi government's crumbling, the Estonian government, the Dutch, the Kuwaiti government, the Russian government. There's a ton of uncertainty. You're also seeing a lot of people in power around the world who have either died or suicided. There are a lot of special operations going on. And this node Neptune Saturn here, and this is a really important structure and something I have talked about for a really long time. This is an aspect that really addresses the gaps between our ideals and reality. That when people start to learn the truth, that there's going to be a lot of distress, that things are not the way we thought they were, that the way something appears is not actually the way it is. And so we're in this process of separating from these old, defunct matrix structures. They're falling away. And so these next few weeks are a really critical period, not only here in the United States, but everywhere in the world. You're going to continue to see this disillusion and separation from the corruption and disclosure. And you will see there can be an exacerbation or more nefarious attempts from the dark faction, but and I've said this over and over again, for every dark attempt there'll be a counter from the light, and we're already over the tipping point and into evolution. So you'll also be seeing other things like the Kung Flu injections. The truth will be coming to light there as well. And I have said over and over again that I did not believe in the long run. I thought that the injections would get somewhat implemented, but I did not believe that they would survive, because the intent here is nefarious, and it is not in alignment with the evolution of humanity. But I think this is also something we'll see down the road a bit. And yes, this Hades, Kronos, Neptune, it can also tell us about unseen benevolent forces at play, and unseen nefarious forces as well. But in terms of benevolence, it can be someone good at who wants to help others in need. Whether it's humanitarian energy or metaphysical forces, unseen forces at play. And it can be someone who's working behind the scenes or in private. So we're in biblical times, peeps. This is like the parting of the Red Sea, and the veil of truth is now being lifted to the world. This is just an incredible time to be alive. So this is the world axis for Inauguration Day. And when we take a deeper dive into the chart and we narrow the focus to the ascendant, and you'll see how close the ascendant is to the world axis and Poseidon. So just that slight shift of the chart tells us about the environment and associations at inauguration time, 12 noon, January 20th. And this is a Taurus ascendant. So with the Taurus ascendant, what is focused on usually manifests. So we have this incredible structure. It picks up on it again. Node, Neptune, Hades with the Saturn, as well as a Sun Kronos and Sun Kronos Zeus at the 22.5 mark on this main axis, which these two midpoint structures, Sun Kronos, Zeus, are both the formulas for presidency. So we're looking here at what the environment is, what the relations are, and with the Poseidon, these two ideologies, this movement toward the future and this resistance to change, can be playing out. There could be a lot of illusion, a lot of nefarious tactics played. And, again, with the Poseidon, the shining of the light on the deception, on some secret, obscure information or connections. I think it's very possible, and I've heard reports from several sources that they may try to use CGI, which is a computer-generated hologram of Mr. B in the swearing-in ceremony. I'm not sure the way it's going to go down, but you can be certain that there will be some nefarious tactics at play, whether it is with the actual inauguration or with mainstream media and the coverage. But that would also set the stage for Mr. T to take down the entire mainstream media. So you would say, well, how could he do that? He's not president anymore. And that brings us to, and really sets the stage for what we already know. And I've gotten several confirmations of this, that as a nation, and Mr. T put this in place, we've already reverted to a constitutional republic, meaning we are no longer USA Incorporated. And this has been done by Mr. T by dismantling the Banking Act of 1781. I'm not sure when he actually did this. When we became, 1781 was when we became incorporated. We became a business as a nation. So this means that, in fact, Mr. T is no longer the 45th president of the United States, but the 19th president of a constitutional republic, which means the USA Incorporated is now defunct, bankrupt, and powerless, which is the presidency that Biden ran for. It could have also been accomplished through the signing of Nisara Jasara, which is the Economic Referendum Act, which does the same thing, but that would require a new election in 120 days. So either way, there are things that are happening that are not seen to the public. That has a lot to do with that Neptune, Hades, benevolent energy. So what does this all mean? It means that if Biden were sworn in on Wednesday, if it makes it that far, that he will be a completely powerless president of the defunct and bankrupt USA Inc. And looking at Inauguration Day, there looks to be in this chart on so many different levels of that there's going to be sudden and powerful reversals. This chart looks like we've hit that evolutionary event between the opposing forces, one that resists change and one that represents the future. So here on the sun, we have, and this is an amazing structure, Mars, Uranus, Jupiter, in a midpoint structure with the meridian and Pluto. Now the Mars, Uranus, and the Moon, Chiron, these are in the Western charts in this heavily tenated 12th house, meaning there's a lot of energy that's happening behind the scenes. This Mars, Uranus, which is typically very independent, very sudden, energetic, can be operating more in terms of collective unconscious energies or metaphysical energies or special ops at play. This structure as a whole here is telling us about sudden, unexpected changes, reversals, disruptions, and conversions. And energetically, this is coming from the collective unconscious, that we're already at this tipping point, and there is a need for the collective to assertively affirm their power and independence. And this can be nefarious or benevolent. The Jupiter here is saying that there can be a lot of positive growth and development that comes out of this, but it can also be that more of the expansion of the garbage. With the chart as a whole, again, we've got that Zeus-Poseidon. So, there's more weight in terms of the reveal of the truth. But something big is going to happen for sure. There's going to be some sort of sudden reversal, whether that is Mr. B suddenly conceding or maybe not showing up for inauguration or maybe going through with it and then getting arrested after. I don't know, but there is going to be some sort of event that happens that changes everything, whether it's earlier on in the day or a little bit later in the day. Around the sun also, we have this Aries and Mitos Poseidon, which means that we come to, on one hand, we can come to a more solid understanding, about what's going on, but it can also tell us about, that there is this resistance to the truth. And we have this node Neptune-Saturn structure, again, that comes into play. And here it's in a 3-point picture with the moon meridian around the sun. So again, there's a gap here between the way something looks and the way it actually is. So there can be a lot of confusion, uncertainty, worries, fears around what you're seeing. So you really need to take tomorrow with an athletic stance and a critical eye, and a giant box of popcorn, because it's going to be just incredible. And if we go to the meridian ascendant midpoint structure here, we're getting further confirmation. That's what we look for when we're looking at resonance and frequency. We're looking for patterns. We're looking for things that repeat. And we're getting further confirmation here with this structure of Saturn, Apollon, Mars, Uranus, Jupiter in this 3-point with node Neptune, meaning that connections are broken. We are separating and breaking from the past. There's a separation and disintegration of the old and beginning and integration of the new. And with the meridian Pluto ascendant Poseidon here, there's a transition toward the truth and the light of Poseidon. There's going to be alterations and developments related to the facts. There's going to be an increase in clarification. And we can figure in the Hades and Mitos here as well. Now, Hades and Mitos is classically that midpoint structure for karma. So we're dealing with unpleasant things from the past. That's all up for inspection. And I think they're going to be it's going to be hard for many people who are not awake to the truth, and that they're scared and they don't understand what's happening, what's going on. And I think that we're really going to get an anchoring of the truth here. So there are many ways that this day can work out, but I do believe it's going to be pivotal. I think that there are going to be major sudden reversals, and that this marks the beginning of this demarcation point for the preceding 2 weeks. That Neptune node, Hades, Chronos, Saturn structure, is within orb on the world axis. So you're going to see this separation happen from the old global criminal cartel and all of the disclosure around that. It's going to be, this is the cataclysmic event. It's upon us, and we're all here to experience it. It's just so exciting. But let's blow up Biden's progress chart and isolate the structures and the goings on at the moment. The progress chart is the growth and evolution of a person over time. So we can always tap in here at any given moment to see the events, the lessons that are coming to them for their personal growth and development. And this chart is showing these just amazing, blatant structures. We've got Sun, Chronos, Neptune on the 22.5 on this cross axis. That is exact right now. It's amazing. Now, Sun, Chronos, Neptune, on one hand, yes, it can deal with, it can exalt for the good or the bad. So, with the Neptune, we have someone who's a diplomat and intuitive, someone who could be really good at a creative, spiritual, or helping profession. It could be a spiritual leader like the Dalai Lama, or just someone who's top notch in their helping profession. But that is not the way it's operating here. It can equally tell us of false leadership, false presidency, deceptive leadership, someone whose leadership is incompetent or confused, or that they find themselves in tremendous uncertainty or instability, or that there are refusals or losses of leadership. We have the Uranus, Vulcanus, Admetos in this 3-point picture here as well. And the Uranus-Vulcanus midpoint structure opposes the meridian, and that can mean a lot of disruptiveness and obstruction. It has to do with a decrease in power. It can be a sudden loss or powerful obstructions or suppression. Uranus-Vulcanus Admetos is the midpoint structure for an earthquake. Yes, it can also be specialized work, innovative work, but we have to look at what the situation is right now and also what is around it. It is also operating through this false, faux presidential configuration of the Sun, Chronos, Neptune on this main axis. What you also have with Biden's chart, and it reiterates this Neptunian, elusive, deceptive energy in his chart, is, and we're going to go to the quad chart here, the node, transiting node Neptune on his natal meridian. And remember, the meridian is the soul. So that Neptune is in opposition to his meridian. So it can tell us about more attunement, sensitivity, developing intuition, but it's an opposition. So there's this need, and it's on the 4th house cusp, which is our emotional foundations, our roots. So there's this need to go within, and give up our involvement with the external world, and letting go of old patterns and ways that drain us. And that kind of energy is not really amenable to the situation of the presidency. So that node Neptune can mean the disillusion or the separation from certain things in our lives. So it can mean collapsing foundations, and what that has to say about our own psychological and emotional foundations. So it's going within energy for sure, and it tells us. It also tells us about deceptions in our connections. either we are doing the deceiving or we are the ones deceived, or both. So this is going to be very interesting because there's so many possibilities that can go down. But I can tell you that the chart with Mr. B, there's so much deception, tremendous illusion. I mean, this inauguration is not the enthronement ceremony for the Dalai Lama. We're not enthroning a spiritual leader. It is quite the opposite. And it's important to remember at this time, the reason why it is happening this way is because the people must be shown. They must see it with their own eyes. It's so important so that they can know in their souls and their hearts what is truth. This is going to be a shock for a lot of people to realize that your entire reality is not what you thought it was. So we have a lot of healing ahead of us as well. It's going to be a great time, but there's going to be a lot of healing and digesting of, what actually is in the coming months. All right, so let's take a look at Mr. T's situation. Now, if you remember in the past readings, I had mentioned that I didn't see things changing for Mr. T until sometime in March of 2021, when all of these Jupiter directions and progressions started kicking in. And actually, it looks like it's going to be the case. And it's not just one Jupiter progression, but there are several combined with specific planetary pictures going on around his progressed sun and his Aries point, which is the world axis. And I recently heard that if he is indeed sworn in as the 19th president of the Constitutional Republic, not USA Inc., because USA Inc., remember, no longer exists, that would most likely happen on March 4th of this year. And that the interim government would basically be the military. So that is one of the reasons why there's a big presence of the military in DC now, and to be this interim protector of the country, of the people. And the other reason their presence is so big right now is from what I'm hearing. And, this is the cataclysmic event that we are entering over the next several days, over the next few weeks. And so from what I'm hearing, that they are also there for arrests and military tribunals that are going to go down over the days ahead. I absolutely do feel that their main and only role, well, not only role, but main role is peacekeeping. And if we look at the winter solstice from 2019, remember the winter solstice is the beginning of the solar cycle. So it gives us an overview of the whole year from 2020. Sorry about that. Winter solstice 2020 to 2021. Gives us the overview of the whole year. And we saw in that winter solstice from just a few months ago the potential for military strategy and operations. It was very clear with this Mars Zeus on the world axis. Also, the Pluto is there, and that would indicate that. But you also have the Venus there that is in this structure, and that is what keeps the peace. So I believe that the primary function of what's going down with the military will be peacekeeping. However, with Mars Zeus, there can be conflagrations. So whatever needs to take place, there can be arson, there can be some fires, there can be riots, there can be military operations on our side, but this is not primarily. I don't believe that there's going to be a lot of bloodshed. The military is primarily there for peacekeeping. So with Trump's chart, and I'm going to put up the quad chart here, you'll notice right off that there is his progressed meridian, which is his evolving soul, and it's been sitting on Saturn for the last few months. It's exact now, and it's a conjunction. So that tells us that there is a lot of structural changes happening in his career. There are new trajectories, that this is the beginning of a new cycle, where structures are changing and we're moving in new directions. This configuration is also tremendous work, reevaluation, these structural changes that prepare us for the new. And why the last few months have probably been some of the most challenging for him as well. And so now, as his progressed meridian is separating from Saturn, the pieces are coming together and settling. Because as we get into March, the meridian moves away from Saturn, and he's got this Jupiter-Pluto progression coming in. Jupiter-Pluto is one of the best midpoint structures for positive growth and development and advancement in the chart. And its exactitude is actually at the end of March, but I would still give this a month orb on either side. And this Jupiter-Pluto is also a semi-square aspect to the meridian, so it can be somewhat stressful. So you always want to see if there are other confirmations going on here that are saying something similar. And we do. We have the directed meridian conjunct the natal meridian Jupiter midpoint structure. And simultaneously to that, we have the natal Jupiter conjunct with the directed meridian Jupiter midpoint structure. So both happen exactly on March 4th, and again, there's a month orb on either side, but that's the exactitude of that configuration, of that picture. So meridian Jupiter means a lot of success, inner satisfaction. And I think with the depth work that I've done with his chart over the past few years, you can see this understanding and appreciation of the role he's playing in the world. There's a clearer, deeper connection to his own soul path. That's very clear to me. The other structure really coming into play at this time is Zeus-Kronos-Apollon, and right now it is both on his progressed sun and his Aries point, meaning he is taking this energy into the world, and people are seeing it. Zeus-Kronos-Apollon is someone who's a strong personality, someone who wants to be an authority figure. It's the midpoint structure for the commander-in-chief. It's also a midpoint structure that deals with military strategy, armament, warfare. So with the Apollon, we get this widespread expansion of the leadership, someone who is industrious and productive. Zeus-Kronos-Apollon can tell us about peaceable government actions. It can also be an expansion of the armament, which is what is happening. So as we move into March, this picture becomes Zeus-Apollon Sun. And remember, we have all of this positive Jupiter energy in Mars as well. So Zeus-Apollon with the Sun can be very successful and expansive on a professional level. And it too is a conjunction, meaning Zeus-Apollon midpoint structure conjuncts the Sun. So this is a very powerful and potentially positive situation. Now, this same structure comes into the picture starting in mid-February on the world axis, and then at the beginning of March, you have this Kronos-Apollon with the Aries point indicating major expansion and success in the world, and the public starts to see and understand his abilities and what he's doing. You're also likely to see a lot of military strategy, and that's what people will be seeing as well. So that March period is becoming clearer that is the time that he will potentially be sworn in as president of the Constitutional Republic. But in the meantime, prepare for this incredible cataclysmic event. We are at the tipping point in the evolution of this living planet. and just get a big box of popcorn. Blessings to you all, and I will try to come on here a bit sooner next time as I see fit and give you more information.